Chairman, I will now ask the Secretary to read the first order of the day.
Consideration of report of Standing Committee on Appropriations on Public Audit Excess Fee Bill.
I will now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Thank you, House Chair. We move that the report be adopted.
The motion is that the report be adopted. Are there any objections? No objections agreed to. I will ask the Secretary to read the second order.
Second reading debate, Public Audit Excess Fee Bill. First reading, apologies, first reading debate, Public Audit Excess Fee Bill.
Thank you. I will now invite the Honorable Chairperson of the committee, Honorable Posa, to lead us.
Honorable Chair, and it is available in the ATC of Parliament for honorable members' perusal. Honorable Chair, Chapter 9 of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, 1996, establishes the Auditor General of South Africa as one of the state institutions supporting constitutional democracy. The Constitution recognizes the importance and guarantees the independence of the Auditor General of South Africa, stating that the Auditor General of South Africa must be impartial and must exercise its powers and perform its functions without fear, favor, or prejudice. The functions of the AXA are described in Section 188 of the Constitution and further regulated in the Public Audit Act, Act number 25 of 2004. This act, which mandates the AXA to perform constitutional and other functions. Constitutional functions are those which AXA performs to comply with the broader mandate described in the Constitution. Section 4 of the Act makes a further distinction between mandatory and discretionary audits. The AXA annually produces audit reports on all government departments, public entities, municipalities, and public institutions. Over and above these entities' specific reports, the Auditor General, through the audit opinions, are analyzed in general reports that cover both the Public Finance Management Act and Municipal Finance Management Act cycles. In addition, reports on discretionary audits, performance audit, and other special audits are also produced. The AXA tables reports to the legislature with a direct interest in the audit, namely Parliament, provincial, and legislatures or municipal councils. These reports are then used in accordance with their own rules and procedures for oversight. Audit fees are charged by the AXA. Section 23 of the Public Audit Act 2004 provides for the Auditor General to determine the basis for the calculation and audit fees to be recovered from auditees in respect of audits after having consulted the oversight mechanism and the National Treasury. An auditee must settle the account for audit fees within 30 days from the date of the invoice, failing of which the Auditor General must promptly take legal steps to recover unless it is not practical to do so. The Auditor General may charge interest on any audit account not paid within 30 days of the date of the account at the date prescribed in terms of Section 1, subsection 2 of the Prescribed Rate of Interest Act 1975, Act number 55 of 1975. If the auditee defaults on the payment of audit fees, the Auditor General must promptly notify the National Treasury, and when applicable, the relevant provincial treasury. The National Treasury or the relevant provincial treasury, as may be appropriate, may, after consulting the Auditor General, direct that audit fees recoverable from an auditee which is not a national or provincial department be defrayed from a vote on the national or provincial budget identified by the relevant treasury. If the audit fee exceeds 1% of the total current and capital expenditure of such auditee for the relevant financial year, such excess must be defrayed from the National Treasury's vote, provided that the National Treasury is of the view that the auditee has financial difficulty to settle the costs. This excludes national and provincial departments. Honorable Chair, the problem was that it was difficult to predict what these claims would be to budget properly for them. Historically, there was always a shortfall between the amounts due and the funds appropriated for this by the National Treasury. So the Public Audit Excess Fee Bill provides for the specified excess of audit fees of certain categories of organs of state payable to the Auditor General as envisaged in the Public Audit Act of 2004. If the stated conditions are complied with, a direct charge against the National Revenue Fund, no more against the National Treasury vote, and to provide for matters connected therefore. That is the difference. There's a movement of now for the direct charge from the National Revenue Fund. Well, in line with Section 32 of the Money Bills Act, the committee has a responsibility to hold public hearings on any money bills and report on the bill to the National Assembly. In the absence of any public submissions after the advertisement was placed in the national and regional newspapers from the 1st to the 8th of March 2019, the bill was adopted by the Standing Committee on Appropriations on the 13th of March 2019. Honorable Chair, the committee welcomes the bill as it will assist to unlock the required resources and guaranteed financial viability for the Auditor General. The independence of the Auditor General is sacrosanct as it is guaranteed in the Constitution. The committee, with regard to the recent amendments to the Public Audit Act of 2004, the committee welcomes the recent amendment to the Public Audit Act of 2004. The significance thereof is that it will enhance the work of AXA and enforce consequence management, which has been a big challenge. We strongly believe that the amendments of the Public Audit Act will assist to improve governance, internal controls, and compliance, particularly supply chain management policies in government departments. The committee strongly recommends that the departments and the public entities must appoint independent audit committees, effective internal auditors, and ensure that effective monitoring and evaluation units are in place and they are continually trained to discharge their responsibilities. Before I conclude, Honorable Chair, I would like to remind this august House that the Freedom Charter is turning 64 years old this year. That seminal document that the freedom-loving people of our country adopted on the 26th of June 1955 in Kliptown, Soweto. On that day, 3,000 delegates arrived from all corners of our country, from towns and the rural areas. They came by trains, bicycles, and on horsebacks, bearing in their hands pieces of papers containing demands from their communities. Simply translated, these demands pointed to a dream to bring about a new society free of discrimination, oppression, and exploitation. These 3,000 delegates, young and old, workers, peasants, and intellectuals, were motivated by nothing else than a quest for freedom and a better life for all. They longed for a country and continent where all shall live as equals, with equal opportunities, friendship, and brotherhood. So, as we table this bill today, Honorable Chair, and we recommend for its adoption, let us dedicate it to these heroes who gathered around in 1955 to come up with this very important document that has informed our constitution, the constitution of the country, and it continues to inform the programs of the government of the day to bring a better life for all. Let us make sure that our forebears, the heroes of the revolution, will look at us with great pride, not with disappointment. With great pride, for they shall know that they gave birth to sons and daughters who will never betray the revolution. The message here being, let us not betray the revolution, the people who died for this revolution. I dedicate this speech today to the heroes and heroines of our revolution, those who sacrificed everything, including life and limb, to ensure that South Africa is a free country today. Let them know that the bill passed by this House today will only be used to bring about a better life for all South Africans, not a certain section of South Africans or certain individuals, and a better future for all. Let this House continue to demand accountability, efficiency, competence, and value for money. Honorable members, let us not tolerate incompetence, mediocrity, and laziness. Let's not tolerate this. We must continue to frown upon corruption and make sure that those who misuse public funds, I repeat, those who misuse public funds are punished, as they also hinder our fight to push back the frontiers of poverty. As I conclude, the 1994 democratic breakthrough provided the ANC as a liberation movement with the opportunity to pursue economic policies which holds inclusive growth, development, wealth distribution, and wealth redistribution at its core, to bridge the inexorable gap between the rich and the poor which are within our country. The committee recommends that this House adopts the bill without any amendment, and the ANC supports the bill. I thank you.
Thank you very much. The debate will be taken on by Honorable Shackleton from the DA.
House Chair, the purpose of the Public Audit Excess Fee Bill is to provide that audit fees in excess of 1% of current and capital expenditure of qualifying auditees audited by the Auditor General is a direct charge against the National Revenue Fund. National and provincial departments are excluded from this provision. This places a focus on municipalities. The proposed provision serves to encourage laziness and irresponsible spending on the part of municipalities. What is the incentive for municipalities once this bill is in place? Across South Africa, we see municipalities in serious debt because they have been financially mismanaged. Provinces like the Northwest are known to us, House Chair. Irregular expenditure in Northwest municipalities increased from 3.19 billion rand to 4.29 billion rand in the 2016 to 17 financial year. 3 municipalities that contributed to 55% of such expenditure were the Rustenburg local municipality with 983.5 million rand, the Inhaka Modiri Molema district municipality with 827.8 million rand, and the Madibeng local municipality with 561.9 million rand. There was no single municipality which was able to achieve a clean audit outcome. Examples of financial mismanagement are extensive across ANC-governed municipalities, House Chair. By ensuring that audit fees exceeding the 1% will now not be paid by municipalities, the incentive to watch the balance sheet, to spend prudently, and to budget sensibly are reduced even further. The financial management of DA-led municipalities is world-class. In the city of Tshwane, Solium Simanga's administration turned around a budget deficit of 2 billion rand. In the city of Johannesburg, the creditors' book stood at 18 billion rand, at the ceiling of National Treasury's prescribed limit when the multi-party government took office. In September 2018, the city of Cape Town was named the top financial center in sub-Saharan Africa, overtaking South Africa's traditional center of finance and commerce, Johannesburg, for the first time. What this bill proposes is equivalent to a bailout for municipalities and will have unintended and unforeseen financial consequences, where the scope of audit fees exceeding the 1% will only accelerate, and greater funding from the National Revenue Fund will have to be sourced time and again. South Africa is not a country with unlimited funds, especially looking at government corruption and excessive bailouts. We cannot continue to look to the National Revenue Fund to be the answer to all problems. The Auditor General needs to be self-sustaining. The way that auditors obtain their fees is to charge for them. The briefing we received from National Treasury essentially states that all avenues were explored to recover audit fees. This is simply not true. With all due respect, having a chat with someone about life, love, and the universe is not a realistic way to extract maximum debt repayments. The laws of the Republic of South Africa make provision for default listing debtors on the Credit Bureau, issuing letters of demand, having summonses served, taking judgment against debtors, and having their property attached and sold. These are the steps that the Auditor General has not tried and should be pursuing. When laws exist, they must be used and applied. In the DA, no one is above the rule of law. No one is above being held to account. On the 8th of May, vote for a party that is honest, responsive, and accountable. Vote DA. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Yako, the EFF.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. If the real evidence by the likes of the former Bosasa executive, who didn't connect the dots, but connected the facts at the State of Capture Commission of Inquiry, and the collapse of government in the majority of state-owned companies has taught us, is the fact that we need to rethink auditing and how it plays a role in bringing good governance, fighting corruption, and improves transparency. The Public Audit Excess Bill before the National Assembly is trying to address the long-standing challenge of departments, state-owned entities, and municipalities failing to pay audit fees due to the Auditor General. The bill seeks to take the money owed by the government entities directly from the National Revenue Fund before it gets to these government entities instead of the National Treasury. While this serves to address an administrative challenge, the Auditor General has a much bigger challenge that we need to address urgently. The main challenge facing the Auditor General is that it depends largely on the likes of KPMG, PwC, Deloitte, and other companies for audit. The problem is many of these companies and their associates and subsidiaries are doing business with government entities, and the very same companies must audit themselves. The likes of KPMG are corrupt to the core, they thrive on state contracts, and there's no way companies like KPMG can be trusted to audit government entities. The Auditor General cannot continue to depend on third-party service providers to carry out its core function. So what we have now is the fox that's guarding the hen house. Giving the Auditor General powers to make recommendations on matters that the NPA must prosecute on was one step towards reconfiguring the role of auditing in government. But these powers can only be effective if the Auditor General is fully independent and well-funded. That is why we need to rethink a funding model that is sustainable and that will ensure full independence of the Auditor General, like all other institutions supporting democracy. All contracts with auditing companies linked with the Auditor General must be cancelled, and the Auditor General must begin an intensive process to build internal capacity and stop relying on crooks. All monies owed by government entities for audit fees must be scrapped, especially monies owed by municipalities and small state-owned entities. All these so-called outstanding audit fees paid by National Treasury is monies owed by few corrupt auditing companies who, through collusion and corruption, enjoy auditing tenders, while majority of young and talented auditors are excluded and forced into scrapping for leftovers. All auditors who are going to audit government must be employed by the Auditor General on a full-time basis and paid decent salaries based on experience and must be provided with all resources to do the work. This is in line with the EFF government intention to build a corrupt-free, capable state to deliver services to our people in time. While the Public Audit Excess Fees Bill may offer temporary relief and remedy, the long-term solution is building internal and external auditing capacity to audit both the financial performance and performance information. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Yako. Honorable Singh from the IFP.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Chairperson, as we have heard, the need for this legislation here introduced by the Ministry of Finance arises from amendments we made recently as the Standing Committee on the Auditor General to the Public Audit Amendment Act. And there were significant changes that were made. One of them was speaks to consequence management, where heads of departments and directors general would be held liable and given certificates of debt for any wasteful, unauthorized, or fruitless expenditure. Now, I think that is a very, very significant move in terms of checks and balances and in terms of accountability. However, this particular piece of legislation here relates directly to the fees that are not paid by many municipalities. And it is of major concern, Honorable Speaker, that there are a number of municipalities who call themselves municipalities in distress that are not paying their audit fees to the Auditor General. Now, this puts a lot of pressure on the Office of the Auditor General, and it is necessary for us to ensure that that office is not pressurized to the extent that it is, and that there is some certainty of funds that would flow into the coffers of the AG. This bill here provides that certainty, but there's also checks and balances in that municipalities in distress or any municipality cannot now ride on the bandwagon and expect National Treasury to pay audit fees due by them. And the Public Audit Amendment Act makes sure that there are these checks and balances, and we hope that between National Treasury and the Office of the Auditor General, they would not allow some of these municipalities to get away by not paying audit fees, which they budget for in their budgets. But as is commonly known, many of these municipalities in our country use funds that should be ring-fenced for particular purposes and start using them for salaries and wages and everything else. Now, that is the problem with these municipalities. Now, in 2018, an amount of 60 million rand was outstanding. The total outstanding debt owed by local government is 529 million rand. And of that 529 million rand, 163 million rand is municipalities in distress. Now, Chair, 73 million, or 45% of that amount is long outstanding, and we cannot expect the Office of the Auditor General to sustain itself and provide the kind of excellence that we expect of it when funds are not coming in through. So hopefully this legislation and the working between National Treasury and the Office of the Auditor General and putting pressure on local governments will ensure that the Auditor General's office remains independent and free from any concern that they won't be given the funds that are due to them. We will support this bill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Sheikh Imam from the NFP.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. The National Freedom Party will indeed support this bill tabled here today. But I think the question that we need to ask is, why did we get to where we are today? And I think it is clear, in this country, there is a culture of non-payment. People don't believe in paying. The 30-day payment is just there in theory. In practice, it does not happen. And because these municipalities, which is our view that they should be paying, but they will choose not to pay, like they don't pay all the service providers. And in order for the Office of the Auditor General to function optimally, it means now we have to put added measures to be able to ensure that they get fees in excess of 1%. Now, I'm not sure whilst this is going to solve the problem of the Auditor General, and the Auditor General's office could operate independently and function, I'm worried about the precedent that we are setting and the message we are sending to organs of state when they either fail, neglect, or refuse to pay. Because every time, Treasury has got to come to their rescue. But added to that is another problem, and that is, who does Treasury account to? Does the Auditor General audit Treasury? Because if Auditor General was auditing Treasury and it was done correctly, then how is it we did not pick up the challenges with the integrated financial management system where millions of rands were lost? So clearly there seems to be a weakness, and I'm satisfied when the Auditor General agrees that the auditing system, whilst one of the finest in the world, is not foolproof. If you know how to manipulate your books, you will still get unqualified clean audit. So I think the Office of the Auditor General needs to look at added measures to try and close that gap, because that seems to be a serious problem. Now, we are satisfied that due processes have been followed, that this will have a positive impact on the functioning of the Office of the Auditor General. And in doing so, the National Freedom Party is of the view that we must support this. And in line with that, we will support this. But we are pleading with the Auditor General. And whilst the Auditor General is listening, I want to bring another, and I think the Minister is here, and I want the Minister to hear this. You give 47,000 rand per member of parliament for constituency offices and things throughout South Africa. But there is no mechanism to check if those offices exist, if the staff exists, that furniture exists. So Minister, together with Treasury and the Auditor General, let's save the taxpayers' money. Let's do something about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable A.R. McLaughlin from the DA.
Honourable House Chair, the Office of the Auditor General in South Africa has a long and proud history. It has served this country with distinction through different administrations and ideologies for over 100 years. One of the reasons why the Auditor General's office has been so successful is because it has always maintained its independence. When I first suggested to the Auditor General, Mr. Kimi Makwetu, that his office needed more teeth so that his work would not be, as it was threatening to become at the time, merely in vain, it was because I was concerned about the fact that most auditees merely ignored the AG's suggestions and negative findings, which repeated themselves year after year due to a lack of consequence. The Auditor General agreed, and so too did the committee. After the protracted process required for the amendment of legislation, the Public Audit Amendment Act was passed into law late last year. However, that section of the Act which provided for the AG to henceforth be entitled to recover certain unpaid audit fees, due by municipalities in particular, from the National Treasury, was certainly not in line with my original intention. Every year, the Auditor General presents his office's financial statements to the Standing Committee on the Auditor General. These statements have, over the past 5 years, always showed a surplus, which the AG has requested permission to retain and apply towards ongoing expenses, and with which to build his office's reserves. I discovered in answer to my question that these reserves are only book entries and not actual cash in the bank, because in the main they represented professional fees for work done and charged for by the AG's office, but unpaid for by the various defaulting auditees. The provisions of the Public Audit Amendment Act sought to correct this by enabling the AG, after consultation and negotiation with National Treasury, to obtain payment from Treasury of whatever outstanding audit fees exceeded 1% of each defaulting auditee's total current and capital expenditure for the year in question. Last year, these accumulated unpaid fees amounted to the princely sum of 158 million rands. When I recently submitted a written question to the Minister of Finance asking how this amount was to be funded, I suspected I set off an alarm bell. Treasury must have realized that in future, at a time when more and more municipalities were failing, the amount payable to the Auditor General in terms of the provisions of this amendment were not only potentially enormous, but they would also have to be met directly out of National Treasury's own budget. I suggest that this new bill before us today was devised by National Treasury as a means of escaping the budgetary noose that it had created for itself. How? Well, National Treasury proposes to dodge the bullet and make the problem a national one by allowing the Auditor General to claim the unpaid audit fees directly from the National Revenue Fund and not from Treasury's own budget. This is a very bad idea and should be rejected out of hand by all members of this House. The reason I say so is because if we pass this bill, it will mean that the Auditor General will have no responsibility to collect its own funds in difficult circumstances, and what it cannot collect will be paid in preference to and at the collective expense of every other government department. Quite apart from that, no matter what checks and balances are woven into the provisions of this bill, the Auditor General will effectively be sacrificing his office's independence and possibly its good name and reputation. If this bill is passed into law, it amounts to a conflict of interests to have a third party who has the greatest interest in the audit outcomes pay the audit fees of those audited. It could also easily result in the exercise of undue influence and manipulation on the part of the parties involved. I urge you all to reject this bill and assist the Auditor General to maintain his office's independence, compete fairly in the market, and be responsible for the collection of his own fees, just as every other professional practitioner in South Africa is required to do. I'm done.
Thank you. The Honorable Kwabasa from the ANC.
Honorable House Chairperson and honorable members, the Office of the Auditor General of South Africa is mandated by the Constitution of the Republic to audit national and provincial departments and also municipalities for every financial year. 10% of the Audit General's clients fall under the financially distressed municipalities and small auditees such as museums, trusts, and boards. Section 23, paragraph 6 of the Public Audit Act provides that if the National Treasury is of the view that the auditee is financially distressed, then the excess audit fees must be paid from the National Treasury's budget vote in an instance where the audit fees exceeds 1% of the current and capital expenditure of the auditee. It has been reported that from the 2014-15 financial year to the current one, the excess audit fees to be drawn from the National Treasury's vote have been a lot higher than the amount appropriated to these financially distressed municipalities and small state institutions. And thus, there have been shortfalls over the past 5 financial years. It has also been observed that the total amount of excess audit fees has been unpredictable and thus made it difficult to provide accurate funding for the purpose of meeting the payable audit fees to the Office of the Auditor General on behalf of the distressed municipalities and other small institutions. The ANC proposes that the excess audit fees be payable to the Office of the Auditor General annually and thus avoid the accumulation over a long period. It also proposes that municipalities which have a potentially large revenue base be capacitated urgently to be able to collect revenue from the consumers of municipal services so that they are able to pay their audit fees. Third, where municipalities have a poor revenue base, sufficient funds be made available every financial year, possibly in the form of a specific grant. And lastly, similar funds be appropriated to the small institutions for the same purpose. The delays in the payment of excess audit fees threatens the financial stability of the Office of the Auditor General. In addition, it makes difficult for the Office of the AXA to carry out its constitutional mandate, and the fact that it has to depend on payments of the excess audit fees from the National Revenue Fund may bring into question AXA's independence. The ANC will continue to protect the constitutional mandate and the independence of the Office of the Auditor General. The ANC therefore supports the Public Audit Access Fee Bill and recommends that the House passes the bill. We wish to remind our people that they have a date with the ANC on the 8th of May. And on that date, vote ANC. Now let me turn to the DA, which tells us that Tswane has cleaned up a deficit in the metro. What the DA conveniently forgets is that the DA-EFF coalition is reported to have stolen 12 billion rand in Tswane through tenders. Your new mayor has taken a decision to cancel the contract between the Tswane Metro and the
Honorable
company
Kwabaza,
called...
please take your seat. Yes, Honorable Paulse, how
Point of
can...
order, Chairperson.
Yes,
The Honourable Gabaza made an allegation of corruption and theft. He cannot make that allegation without a substantive order.
And
So he has to withdraw that.
I hear you, but he's talking about the parties, not the individuals. Continue, Honorable Kwabaza.
Your new mayor has taken a decision to cancel the contract between the Tswane Metro and the company called Glad Africa. The latest reports suggest that the DA-EFF looting has ballooned to more than 17 billion rand in Tswane. The Johannesburg Metro has also suffered a similar DA-EFF stealing of more than 1 billion rand through the tender.
Honorable Kwabaza, take your seat. Yes, why are you rising, Honorable Member?
Ikhona into angayisikhombisa lona eyiproof ukuthi khona
Honorable
lo mali
Member,
ithathiwe.
Ngicela
Honorable Kwabaza.
Honorable Member, I'm going to switch off your mic now. Honorable Ma'am, as a debate, ne speaker on the podium. Continue, Honorable Kwabaza.
The DA-EFF corrupt coalition rules in Tswane and in Johannesburg. In Nelson Mandela Bay Metro, the DA-EFF corrupt coalition has been joined by the UDM. We shall be polite, UDM. We shall not call you Amasela. Thank you.
Sithokoze Mhlonishwa. Sekela ngqongqoshe kwezezimali ubaba uGungubele.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Auditor General plays a central role in ensuring constitutional democracy by enabling oversight and accountability in the public sector. Through auditing, it identifies non-compliance, wrongdoing, and where public funds were wasted, used incorrectly, or stolen. In 2018, this Parliament passed a significant bill to strengthen the Auditor General's hand to protect the public sector resources for the benefit of the people. That involves ensuring that if based on wasteful expenditure, irregular expenditure, the Auditor General makes a recommendation. If it is not implemented, a remedial action is enforced. If it is not implemented, a certificate of debt is given to the head of department. We think that is a step forward in strengthening these institutions. All institutions audited by Auditor General must pay audit fees. The audit fees are used to pay for Auditor General's expenses, fixed assets, and to maintain small surplus as working capital and general reserve. Municipalities and public entities that are in financial distress only have to pay the audit fees up to 1% of its current and capital expenditure. The excess amount is payable from the vote of National Treasury. About 10% of the income of the Auditor General falls in the financial distressed category. These are low-capacity municipalities and small entities like museums. The funds to be paid from National Treasury's funds have for many years been less than appropriated amount and resulted in shortfalls. In 2017-18, the amount required was 132 million, while only 46 was appropriated for this purpose. As a result, a shortfall of not less than 86 million was realized. Unpaid audit fees deprive the Auditor General of much needed cash flow to do its work and put its financial viability at risk. Considering the need for affordable audit fees and preventing the misuse of funding through the direct charge without impeding the Auditor General's constitutional mandate, the 2018 Public Audit Amendment Act, instead of the current arrangement where AG has to rely on reimbursement from the vote of an institution it audits. Having affordable audit fees without impeding the Auditor General constitutional mandate and preventing the misuse of funding through a direct charge, these are necessary. To this end, the 2018 Public Audit Amendment Act provides for the Auditor General to consult the National Treasury on the scope, nature, and frequency of audits. The Auditor General and the National Treasury must agree on the annual date of such consultation, the criteria to determine if a municipality or public entity is unable to pay these. The bill will enhance the financial independence of the AG and limit or reduce vulnerability of this institution. The Auditor General has a pivotal role through its audits, new remedial and recovery measures, and performance audits to guard public resources, enable legislatures in their oversight function, building trust in the public sector, and most importantly, ensuring that that institution stays independent. Our attitude as the ANC is to ensure that we correct the wrong rather than barking about it. I just want to draw the attention of the House to this. In 2013-14, cash and cash equivalent in Joburg was 5 billion. I want to repeat this. In 2013-14, cash and cash equivalent in Joburg was 5 billion. That was the ANC. 2017-18, cash and cash equivalent is 2 billion. That is the DA. These are records. 2, you can go to the books of Joburg as we speak. SCOPA, the Public Account Committee, since DA took over in Joburg, has never recommended anything on corruption. You go and check your records. Funds that have been unauthorized have never been put through processes of authorization. Those are matters of record. In other words, you can have your opinion, you can't have your facts. We are putting in place a bill to ensure that AG's independence is untampered with and the vulnerability is undermined. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister. That concludes the debate. Are there objections to the bill being read for the first time? In light of the objection, I will now put the question. Those in favor of the bill being read a first time should say aye. Aye. Those against should say no. No. And I think the ayes have it.
House Chair, the DA calls for a division.
A division having been called, the bells will be rung for 5 minutes. Order, honorable members. I would like to remind all the members that they may only vote from their allocated seats. When requested to do so, members must simply indicate their vote by pressing the appropriate button below the yes, no, or abstain signs. If a member inadvertently presses the wrong button, the member may thereafter press the correct button. The last button pressed will be read as the member's vote when the voting session is closed. The question before the House is that the Public Audit Excess Fee Bill be read a first time. Are you all in your allocated seats? The voting will now commence. Those in favor of the bill being read a first time should press the yes button. Those against should press the no button. Those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Have we all voted? The table staff, I think you are checking on the hands that are up. You are noted, Honorable Lesoma. Thank you. The voting station is now closed. The voting session is now closed. The results are as follows: abstain 0, the noes are 56, the yes 209, which says the Secretary will read the bill a first time.
Public Audit Excess Fee Bill.
Thank you very much. The bill is agreed to. I will ask the Secretary to read the third order.
Second reading, Public Audit Excess Fee Bill.
Thank you. As there is no speakers list, I will now put the question. Are there any objections to the bill being read a second time? In light of the objection, I will ask the question. Those in favor of the bill being read a second time will say aye. Those against will say no. I think the ayes have it. So it
House Chairperson, the DA calls for a division.
A division having been called, the bells will be rung for 2 minutes. Thank you. Honorable members, as usual, just to remind you that you can only vote from your allocated seats. Order. The question before the House is that the Public Audit Excess Fee Bill be read a second time. Are all members in their allocated seats? Voting will now commence. The signal, is it there? Those in favor of the bill being read a second time should press the yes button. Those against should press the no button. Those wishing to abstain should press the abstain button. Again, Honorable Lasuma, you are noted. Have you all voted? Thank you. The voting station is now closed. Aye, man. What's happening? My apologies. Voting session is now closed. Thank you. These are the results. The abstain is 0, noes 57, yes 209. That leads to the Secretary to read the bill for the second time.
Public Audit Excess Fee Bill.
Thank you. The bill will be sent to the National Council of Provinces for concurrence. Thank you. I will now ask the Secretary to read the fourth order.
Consideration of Public Service Commission Amendment Bill and of report of Portfolio Committee on Public Service and Administration, as well as planning, monitoring and evaluation thereon.
Thank you. I will invite the chairperson of the committee, Honorable Maswangai, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairperson. Today we table before the Augusta House the Public Service Commission Amendment Bill B21-2015. The bill seeks to amend the following sections of the Public Service Commission Act 1997, Act 46, 1997. Section 4 of the bill, which clarifies the procedure with regard to the renewal of the term of office of a commissioner as stipulated in Section 196, subsection 10 of the Constitution. Section 5 of the bill, which establishes the process of designating an acting chairperson in cases both the chairperson and deputy chairperson are absent. In November 2018, the bill was referred by this August House to the NCOP for concurrence.
Honorable Maswanganye, wait. Honorable members, there's too much movement and the noises are above the speaker. Please take your seat. Continue, Honorable Maswangai.
Thank you, Chairperson. In November 2018, the bill was referred by this August House to the NCOP for concurrence. The National Council of Provinces has widely consulted all 9 provinces and made amendments to the bill, which was later referred back to the Portfolio Committee for deliberations. The committee had extensively deliberated on the amendments in relation to the criteria set in renewing one additional term of office of a commissioner in the Public Service Commission. The committee concurred and agreed with the amendments, which are in line with Section 196, subsection 10 of the Constitution. However, the committee has taken a decision that in the 6th Parliament, the Minister of Public Service and Administration and the Public Service Commission should swiftly develop rules or regulations to give effect to the provisions enshrined in the Public Service Commission Amendment Bill. Developing such regulations will assist both the Parliament and the President to have a smooth renewal process of the term of office of a commissioner, which is guided by a coherent and standardized method across the Public Service Commission. The regulations should be used as a scientific tool for assessment or measurement of performance of commissioners. This will also assist both parties in avoiding labor relations conflict, which might result in the court of law. The ANC-led government will always strive to strengthen the role of the Public Service Commission by ensuring well-experienced, knowledgeable commissioners are retained for one additional term in the office. The ANC supports and agrees to the amendments. Now is the time. Vote ANC. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. I will now recognize the Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
House Chair, I move that the bill as amended by the National Council of Provinces be passed by this House. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any objections to the motion as moved by the Chief Whip of the Majority Party? No objection, but I realize there's a request for declaration. Honorable Van der Merwe.
Agbare voorsitter en collega's, vandag, soos ek reeds op 14 November 2017 onder hierdie huis se aandag gebring het, sit ons die onaanvaarbare tradisie van minagting van ons pligte wat deesdae norm geword het in die parlement onbeskaamd voort. This very basic piece of legislation referred to as the Public Service Commission Amendment Bill has taken the first time more than 2 years to be tabled to this House, from 2015 till November 2017. Now it is back from the NCOP, another 16 months later for absolute minor amendments. The bill seeks to amend the Act in order to ensure efficiency and certainty with regards to the process of renewal of term of office of a commissioner and designation of an acting chairperson for the Public Service Commission. The provisions of the bill seek to provide for continuity in the PSC with respect to retention of commissioners with experience and with regard to the execution of the Public Service Commission's mandate. In this regard, the bill clarifies the process to be followed by the President whenever the President renews the term of office of a commissioner as contemplated in Section 196, subsection 10 of the Constitution. It further makes provision for the designation of a commissioner to act as chairperson of the PEC whenever both the chairperson and the deputy chairperson are absent or for any other reason unable to act as a chairperson. Now, after the 16 months, it's inserted, and I quote, for a period not exceeding 30 days, close quote. A reminder to us all, Section 196 of our Constitution states that, and I quote, the Commission is independent and must be impartial and must exercise its powers and perform its functions without fear, favor, or prejudice in the interest of the maintenance of effective and efficient public administration and a high standard of professional ethics in the public service. The Commission must be regulated by national legislation. I close quote. En dit is presies wat die Staatsdienskommissie gedoen het toe hulle die voormalige minister van Staatsdiens, Faith Mutambi, en haar kantoor die afgelope jaar ondersoek het en verskeie onreëlmatighede gevind het. Ons verwag dat die speaker, wat soos die president die ondersoekverslag ontvang het met betrekking tot hierdie lid se werkswyses in haar kantoor, voor die etiese komitee ter tafel sal lê vir optrede, synde sy steeds 'n lid van hierdie parlement is. We support the Public Service Commission and want them to continue performing their duties in this without fear or favor manner. We support the bill and the report. Thank you, Chair.
I thank you. The EFF, Honorable Thembekwayo.
Thank you, Chairperson. The contents of this bill are technical in nature and clarify issues relating to terms of office and who should act when the Commissioner and CEO are unable to. And we have no objection to the original amendment or to the additional changes proposed by the NCOP. This is, however, an opportune time to speak about the failure of the Public Service Commission and its inability to build, develop, or maintain an effective and efficient civil which is able to deliver to its citizens. But ask any South African, and they will tell you that this government is failing them, and that from the Western Cape to Limpopo government is neither effective, efficient, or in the service of the people. The Public Service Commission should be central to ensuring a capacitated and motivated civil service. Instead, we have useless organizations too scared or perhaps themselves too incompetent to confront cadre deployment and corruption that is collapsing the inability of government to provide service. Official documents of the Public Service Commission is supposed to promote a high standard of public service leadership and encourage best practices in human resource policies, promote good governance and improve governance practices in public service, promote a high standard of ethical conduct among public servants due to preventing and combating corruption. If we are to use these three standards as a benchmark for the success or failures of the Public Service Commission, it is clear it has failed. But for this failure, it's not solely as fault. For 25 years, the ANC has misguided our people and has misdirected the revolution.